this lesson I'll show you a very simple way to make a Marquise shaped setting and put it in a ring. 0.6 of a mil thick, 2.3 mil wide, and just grip the end, and we want a nice consistent curve. So place the stone into the strip like so, make sure there's no gaps. If there was a gap, then I would have to just straighten out the curve a little bit. I'll test again to make sure that the curve is the right shape. See where the point is there. So I'm more than confident that that is enough to make the bezel. And now I'm going to follow that mark with a cut with my 4/0 saw blade, and I'm going to cut into just over half the thickness of the strip. Now you need to make sure the metal was annealed earlier, because there's going to be some stress on this joint when you start to form the setting. Okay, so again, just cut again, not too far. And now if you didn't get the cut work dead square to the strip, then it will be slightly offline. Now that is a little bit offline, but it's easy enough to pull it to meet up properly. So again, I'll squeeze it together, and now we've got the end in place there. And as you get to the end where it's just about to go through, then you just speed the blade up a little bit, and then it should go through quite easily without pulling on the strip. Now it will pull a little bit, and you can see it's just pulled itself out of line again. So you'll notice what a nice tight joint that is, and I'll just check to see if I need to take any more metal out. So rest the stone on top with the pick like so, and then I'm going to solder the open end first. So I'll just place the solder right on the joint. I'm not going to allow the solder to run just yet. I'm going to get ready with my tweezers and just hold the setting very gently, because as the metal comes up to red hot, it loses its strength completely, and it's very easy to collapse the setting. So I'm only giving it enough tension to close that joint. And the solder just took off on one side. It did actually go into the joint as well there, you can see it there. So I'm not going to obsess about getting any more solder on that, because I will be putting a claw there in a minute anyway. So now with the other bit of solder, that's the easy one. The setting is together, so all I have to do is just run solder along the joint there. Make sure it's come through the other side. Be careful not to go too far, because it will break through and then you're going to have to start again. So take a good look, make sure that we've still got some metal the other side. And now I'm going to swap over to a square needle file, and this just widens the groove. So the points need to make contact with the points, because we're going to put a little pocket in there, and that will then trap the point of the stone and stop the stone from coming out. So this is where you have to go uncomfortably close to through. So I've now got a tapered burr that you can actually use a drill to do this with a steady hand. I've got 6 mil. So now I use the side of my bench peg to bend it, and the other side's easy to bend with my thumb. It's looking a little bit wide that, but we'll see. Got to be careful not to put any undue pressure on the bezel because it's got two very weak points. That's enough, and you see it's nice and straight there. So I'll flux that and the way I'm going to do that is, first of all, I'm going to keep this structure in place because that will ensure that the claws don't drop off whilst I'm doing the soldering operation. And I'm going to find the center point on both sides of the bezel and put a little divot in there. And if I get it right, it should hold in place whilst I do the soldering and hopefully not twist or turn. And I'm going to file it up a little bit shorter than what I've marked because the way I'm going to do this, it's going to close in a little bit tighter onto the setting, which will I'll get things started and burr in, stop, make sure that it is dead center, and you can see that it's a little bit lower here than there, so just make sure that you do that. And I'll stop it there, otherwise I might go all the way through, and I'll just check. And as you can see, I probably need to round off the end of the shank a little bit more so it goes right inside that divot I've created. Okay, that's in, and I need to just do some checks to make sure that it is dead square. That looks pretty good so far. To just make sure nothing moves whilst you're soldering. Pop the solder on, get the heat distribution correct, and it should run directly into the joint. And then prepare it for polishing. So first of all, I'll just run my half round hand file on the inside and just put a curve so that it fits comfortably on the finger. So get it going quite fast and then just scrape away on the inside. Don't overcut it, we're just removing a little bit of metal. For this, so just get the burr going again, around about 1 mil from the top of the bezel. Just put a little divot into the claw. Now don't go too far because we just want to test the fit of the stone first, so I'm just going around about 1/4 of the way into the thickness and do the other side. Again, just slightly up from the top of the bezel, and you can approach the work side on like I'm doing there. I'm ready to push the claws onto the stone, and before I do that I'll just grab the stone and just make sure that when I move it from side to side, the point of the stone doesn't slip out the claws. So it also tells me that there's a little bit of movement inside the pockets that I've created, so there's less chance of the tips of the stone breaking. So it does need a little bit of room inside the claws. The wire is 1.2 thick, so it's quite thick wire for pushing. You could try and push it with a brass pusher, one side then the other, but it is very tough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my chain nose pliers and I'm going to squeeze the claws, give it equal pressure on both sides, and just move them closer together and try and lock the stone in. So it should get to the stage where you can turn the ring around and the stone won't come out. And just see what kind of movement we've got. We've got a little bit of tilting movement there, but I can now turn it to the side to show you the contact point. So you can see I'm giving it equal pressure on both sides, and you can see where the pliers contact the top of the claws there. So I'll give it another squeeze. And making them a little bit narrower on the top there. I need to put downward pressure and come in contact with the stone quite close to where the vulnerable part of the stone is the point. So I'm using a shaped pusher, so it's a steel pusher with a groove in it, and I can just grab the claw right at the end just before the tool falls off the end there, and just give it a little bit of a wobble and a push until that gap closes. Start on round stones and work your way up towards shaped stones. And there you go, you can see the metal just on the edge there moving into the gap. I always imagine the metal as more like putty or clay, that you can actually mould it into shape and avoid contact. And there we have it, set, polished and finished.